Inspire.fm.
Hello and welcome back to Inspire.fm. This is Jana Marino on Conscious Creation. Good morning. And today I have a wonderful guest named Max. And Max is getting married next year to a very wonderful woman named Catherine. So Catherine, if you're tuning in, we're giving you a shout out. So give her a shout out, Max.
Hello.
Yeah, so Max, what is it that you'd like to create in your life?
I would like to talk about being clear of what to create. Many times I realize that among our friends we have, or being ambitious at certain things, you want everything. Mm-hmm. So how do we tone ourselves down and realize on each particular direction or things that we want to create and focus on specific things, or can we do it simultaneously?
Like create more than one thing at the same time. Of course. Actually, whether we know it or not, we're always creating. So I'm starting to notice personally, like with little thoughts that I have, I'll see them repeat. So for example, like last week, I was watching Lord of the Rings again after a while. And I remember thinking to myself, ooh, Orlando Bloom makes a really nice elf. And later that night, I spoke with a friend who mentioned Orlando Bloom. And then the next day, I met with a client who also mentioned Orlando Bloom. And even after that, someone else. So I knew that that was just a thought repeating. Yeah. So actually, all day, every day, we're creating. It's just, are we aware of it? So again, 40 billion bits of information. Our brain is actually processing about 11 billion bits. And we're only aware of 7 to 12 bits of information. Any other day, I might not have even been aware that I had the thought, ooh, Orlando Bloom looks nice as an elf, right? So, but for some reason, that thought stuck. And then as his name started popping up in conversation, I knew that that was something that I had created. So chances are, if we're not very focused or if we're unclear on what it is we want to create, we're going to get kind of unclear results. So it'll be like muddled results, yeah? So what is it that you're wanting to focus on and maybe aren't so clear on?
Okay, now let's give it a general statement. For example, a happy family, for example. Mm-hmm. And maybe past experience you would have arguments with your siblings or with your parents or certain external conflicts that arises. Mm-hmm. So let's say you would want to give your mom a hug every morning. Mm-hmm. But somehow in a traditional Chinese way of doing things, that would be a bit awkward. Mm. How do you break that bond from, say, step by step kind of thing, or as simple as having breakfast with your parents every Sunday morning or Saturday morning or that kind of thing, without the thoughts of past experiences which has probably affected you all this while?
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of humans do. They take their past experiences and they bring it into the now. So it's kind of like, well, my mom was like that yesterday and my mom's been like that for the last 15 years. So chances are she's going to be like that today. But that's not really fair to do to another person as well, because we don't know what kind of mood they're in. We don't know how great they're feeling. Maybe if we give them the opportunity, they can be different. But the thing is many times, especially in relationships, we rely on the other people to make us happy. So we're like, well, if you're going to be a good mom, you would hug me and you wouldn't be so Chinese or, whatever, or so traditional. Yeah, but that's asking way too much of another person. Mm-hmm. That's like me asking my partner, okay, so if this relationship is going to work, you have to show me you love me and you have to come home on time every night and you have to be this person. That's not fair. I'm asking him to change to make me happy. So a lot of times in conscious creation, there's a false premise at play. We think, okay, I think I'll be happier once this person starts acting a different way, right? And once they start acting a different way, I'll be happier. But conscious creation, instead of operating from there, we say instead, oh, I think I'd be happier if this person acts another way, so I'll just go ahead and start being happier. Yeah? So a lot of times we look for other people to fill that void and to make us feel better. And we forget, oh, it's actually not their job. It doesn't matter if it's your mom, your kids, your siblings, your partner, your wife, your husband. it's not their job. That's your job. And when you're already happy, you set them free. So it's not their job. Now they can live their life. They're free to live their own life, and you're not trying to tell them how to be. Yeah? So when this happens, you give them a platform to add value and add joy to your life, but they're not the source of your joy. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So you want to change maybe, like if there's any listeners out there that want to change the relationship you have with your parents, maybe sit down and make it a point to talk to them.
Right.
Yeah? So, like, I'll give a personal example with my ex-mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. We really didn't get along. We didn't talk very much. My family, coming from my background, we were a very open, loving family. We talked a lot. We had a lot of connection. We showed a lot of love. So we always hug and kiss and say, I love you. And then coming out here, it was a bit of a culture shock for me. It was a bit different. Right. But what I found, and it took me about 2 years to get this. And finally, one day, I just started talking to her. And actually, we have a really nice relationship. I never gave her the time and the place to talk. I always thought, oh, she's just like that. So I was bringing my past into the future. Right. You know, and so I wasn't creating a very nice space for her to express and be who she is. And once we started talking, now I'm actually pretty close with her. Mm-hmm. I talk to her still on the phone at least 2 or 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. But I've given her the platform without looking at her to be a certain person.
Right. And I also realized when you mentioned about creating, on which level should we start creating with? Emotionally, should we handle our emotional stuff first, or should we clear our mind first, or should we read more books first, or do some searches online first? How would you start off with handling a situation like that? I mean, just that issues of building bonds and creating that kind of a more open, happy family where we can talk to each other and stuff like that.
Well, I would start with me. So it could be, because everyone's different. So I might come in and say, oh, I always worked with emotions first, then I did the meditation, then I started reading. But everyone's going to be different. So we're actually all on our own separate journey. So, you know, clearing emotions worked really well for me, and meditation worked really well for me. It might not work for a lot of other people. So find out what's right for you. But I think the most important thing, if you want something to change in your life, especially if you're not into meditation or clearing or any of these kinds of things, is start asking more empowering questions. That's a really great place to start. Okay. So if you think about it, our brain is this amazing computer, and it automatically goes to work trying to find information and answers for us. It starts sifting through the information the minute we ask a question. It's just oftentimes we're not asking a very good question. We're asking, why is my mom like that? Why is my girlfriend like that? Why is this person like that? Why can't they change? And who do they think they are? And who does that? Yeah. So the minute you ask this question, whether you're even looking for an answer or not, your brain goes to work on it. So, and your brain will actually start picking out the bits of information that will reflect. So if you ask a more empowering question like, oh, how can I express more love to my mom? Or how can I have a more supportive family life? Or what can I do to have a more loving family? So when you start asking more empowering questions, your brain goes to work. And the best part is you don't have to sit there and try to think of the answer. Right. You know, you just ask the question and you walk away. And what will happen is you'll start getting your answers, just like I was getting Orlando Bloom, you know, all around. So if you ask more empowering, that's a good place to start for anyone. But I would say the most important thing would be to listen to you. So you might get an impulse. You might, I'm going to read this book today. Or you might turn on the TV and flip to a certain station and it's playing a program about family relationships. So everyone's journey is different. When you listen to your heart, it will not steer you wrong. Yeah. So everyone's different.
Okay. How about handling resistance, for example? I asked those questions and 2 hours later something popped up, another argument turns up, and you feel bad and emotionally disrupted, and you go ask the question again, say half an hour later when you're a bit more calmer. So how do we expect, or how do we gauge on the creating that sort of happy thing because it's a continuous thing.
Yeah.
And as and when things happen, how do you make yourself feel better that everything's all right, it's going to be okay, focus on the questions and move on?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, are arguments bad? So a lot of times people say, oh, arguments are bad because they make us feel bad, and then we fight, and then we can't talk to each other. But what is good or bad? It actually doesn't even exist in the universe. So maybe an argument was needed at that time so that you both could learn how to grow together more, or so you're learning how to be together. Yeah? So resistance. A lot of times why people don't like arguments or they make them bad is they're resisting it. They're saying, oh, an argument's bad. I don't want to argue, la, 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 la. And then they immediately try to create from that space of, I hate arguments. But when you try to create from that space, you're only going to create more arguments, right? So the best space to really create from is when you're really centered and focused, when you're having one of those days and you're really present. You know, it's unfolding and you feel good. So I wouldn't suggest trying to create in that moment of a heated argument.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably not the best time to do it. But first I would say, well, don't resist the argument and don't make it bad. You know, if an argument happens, okay, for whatever reason it needed to happen, right? If a negative emotion comes up, especially, don't resist the negative emotions. It's just there pointing you in the direction, right? So in Money and You, they have this flip chart called precession, or called course correction, and it has this, the ship that went to the moon. It was on course 2% of the time. The other 98% of the time, it was course correcting. So when you gauge your negative emotion and you have it, or you're angry at someone, or you're hating them, or, oh, it's all their fault.
Right.
It's understanding, this is how I course correct. Your negative emotion is there to let you know, hey, you're not on course. So if you ever had that game operation when you're young where you have those tonsil, like those I don't know, they're like small chopsticks, then you have to go in and pick out of the body, and if you touch the side of the body, it goes zzz, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of what negative emotion is. It's not bad, it's just letting you know, hey.
But you got to start all over again.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, ignore that part. just think of the emotions as the zzz part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not the actual game, right? So also, when an argument happens, I think a lot of people, it is easier. It is easier to blame the other person. It's easier to say, oh, you started this. Oh, it's your fault. Oh, you did. It's actually the easiest thing to do. It's easy to say you're responsible for my happiness. It takes a little bit of effort at first to be responsible for your own effort, to be responsible for your part in the argument. Yeah, so I just had a client, and I met up with him, and he said, oh, this girl, I asked her out on a date, and she was really excited about it, and then she just SMS'd me and told me she didn't want to go out anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I was questioning him to see how he created it, where's the responsibility? And of course, every client that comes into my sphere, I'm responsible for, so any problem they're experiencing is also my problem. So if I see it as a problem. So he was talking, and then we found out, the day that he asked her out, he had just broken up with someone. Mm-hmm. And actually the few days that followed, he was feeling like he was still mourning and grieving the past relationship. And it was a few days later that she SMS'd him back saying, I don't know if dating is such a good idea. I just want to be friends. Mm-hmm. And so at first he was a bit upset, and he was like, why did she do that? Why didn't she just tell me from the get-go? And I said, well, you're coming from you a lot. You need to change. You didn't do this. Come from I. And so when we got to the bottom of it, it was actually, I wasn't really ready. And I can see how I created this because I was still grieving my past relationship.
Right.
And I wasn't over it. And for whatever reason, she might have picked up on those vibes. Even though they hadn't seen each other, she might have gotten that and said, gotten second thoughts. Yeah. So again, everyone is just reacting to everyone else's energy. So if you're carrying energy and you bump into your mom and your energy about your mom says, oh, you're not loving and you're a bad person and you need to change, your mom is going to react to that. She's not going to know why. She's just going to react, right? So it's like a trigger. You walk in and suddenly there's this uneasiness and you might think, oh, I didn't even do anything. It's just her. But what energy are you carrying about that person? And how are you responsible for it?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It kind of does. The next question would be taking actions towards your emotions. What would be a right way to react towards an emotion? If argument could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, and there's no good thing or bad thing. Mm-hmm. So how do you react or gauge whether to take actions towards that emotion?
Okay. Well, for me personally, I don't take action if I'm in a really intense emotion, whether that's like anger or hate. That's when I really don't act. So I put myself in adult timeout. Mm-hmm. So, and even my daughter does that. So if she sees that I'm upset about something, she'll say, Mommy, go to timeout. So then I'll go to timeout, So I don't make timeout wrong. It's a space to feel your feelings. If a strong emotion comes up for whatever reason, it's good to note that it came from somewhere. There's a story you subscribe to.
Okay. That's
creating the emotion. So if if the story is, my mom is unloving, she's unsupportive, and she's very traditional, and it's very hard to get close to her. Yeah, I can see where that would make someone angry. Or you can create a different story. You can say, that's just how my mom is, and she was raised a certain way, and I still love her, and I know that she loves me too, and she just has a different way of showing it. That's a bit more of a supportive story. Or you can go the spiritual route, and you can just see things as it is. Oh, that's my mom, and that's how she is. And there's no story. So that's much more like Zen.
Right.
Right? So instead of labeling everything, just seeing it as it is. And actually, I think that would be the most supportive way for anyone, right, is to just see how it is. But instead, we see things and we go, oh, that's good. That's bad. Yeah. And the minute we label it good or bad, we introduce suffering into our life. So the good things bring joy, but that, I love my boyfriend, so he brings me joy. But then the minute he leaves or travels, then I feel sad and I miss him. So then suddenly, what brings, pleasure can also bring pain unless you're whole and complete as you are, which would have to be a whole nother topic. Because So when we label it as bad, the argument is not bad. It doesn't bring out bad emotions until we label it as bad. Our partner or whoever we're fighting with doesn't bring about negative emotion until we resist it, until we say this is bad and we should not be fighting.
Okay.
Right. So should is an indication of resistance. So when we say things like, oh, I should or she should,
right,
or we think the thoughts of should or should not, that's immediately an indicator that we're resisting something. If we just, an earthquake happened. Okay. Right? So, I lived in California, so when I was very young, there was earthquakes all the time, and many people, oh, it's a bad thing. Is it? Mm-hmm. In their grander perspective, in the grander view, is it? Is it a bad thing? Yeah, to our life, it may appear that way, but again, a different perspective.
Right.
Yeah. So what is it that you're creating?
Well,
put you on the spot like that?
Yeah. No, what I really want is a happy family. A very, very well gathered and open and chit-chatty, constantly open to each other kind of family. Because I'm the youngest, and I grew up playing alone, sort of. So the distance of age gap, it's pretty far apart, and hence the topics that we talk about, it's pretty different. So now that we're all adults, trying to bring that gap together and I guess topics are really much relevant. And I feel a bit, it takes a little bit more effort than it's needed to. So probably on the effort part, that's the thing that I would like to start off with.
Yeah, you don't want it to be such a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Right? Well, one thing I would say is don't make the gap wrong. Yeah, so, the gap is there. So, again, if we remember the 3 keys to alignment, the first is embodiment, embody what you want. The second is acceptance. So just accepting, there's a gap. and I'm not going to make it wrong. And then the minute you're okay with the gap, the minute you stop feeling all this discord, the emotional ups and downs, right? It's also important, just came to mind, was Theodore Roosevelt. He was a president in the United States. And why he was so popular is he was so interested in other people. He was always reading up about like before he would meet someone, it didn't matter who, he would read up about subjects they were interested in so that they could converse. But he was genuinely interested. It wasn't just talking to blow smoke. It was, what do you do? What do you like, Max? And then, and coming from there, when you're really interested with other people, it really makes a difference. So the other night I went to a party. It was a friend's birthday. And I knew that the people there, they weren't really into the same things that I was into, but that doesn't make them wrong or bad. But I thought, I'll just go and have a good time.
Right.
And all I did was just ask people, so what are you interested in? What business are you in? How's life going for you?
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, when we were leaving, everyone was complimenting to my boyfriend, wow, what a wonderful girl. What a great conversationalist.
Yeah.
And no one asked anything about me. It was just, oh, what's going on in your life? And how are you doing? And, oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I went through something similar as well. And this was, men and women. Right? And I didn't even talk about it was just all about being but I was genuinely interested in them. Oh, what's going on for you? I hadn't seen them in like a year and a half,
Yeah.
And so when you genuinely take an interest and you ask someone and ask for their standpoint, they automatically feel safe around you. It's, I can really connect with that. So this is like the first level in connecting. So there's many other levels to connecting. There's also soul connection as well. But first level is always, hey, what's going on in your life? Hey, do you need support in anything? How's business going? What areas do you want to improve on? And then you'll watch, they'll get into this rant. And this goes for family members, for friends, for networking events. I was a terrible networker for many years. Like I hated going to networking events. I was always calling in sick or not wanting to go. And it was really until I started taking a genuine interest in people that it became fun.
Right.
And then on top of that, I could remember them much more easier next time I bumped into them because I remembered what we talked about.
Yeah.
So just some food for thought. Yeah. So, Max, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And I'm sure I'll be meeting up with you again a little later. So, and if you ever have any other questions, please come in. And for any of you listeners out there, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at jana@wisdom-ink.com, or you can visit my website at wisdom-ink.com. And thank you so much for tuning in. This is Conscious Creation on Inspire.fm, and I am your host, Jana Marino. Happy manifesting.
Inspire.fm